fast and breathless moment at the dawn of the 18th century, these men and women answered to no one and were masters of their own lives. And it's within this explosive setting we live the story of Edward Kenway, a selfish and ambitious pirate who will become the uneasy allies of assassins, the bane of Templars, and the enemy of empires.
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we are going back to Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Why are we doing that? Ubisoft is releasing the quadruple A, $70, absolutely incredible Skull and Bones. And so naturally, when I thought of pirates and Ubisoft, my brain went to Black Flag, and I thought to myself, this would be a good time to fire this one up. Just, warm the old Black Flag muscles, and then hop into Skull and Bones, which you're gonna review over on my Mr. Matty channel. But anyway, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was where I feel the franchise really started to explore boundaries I didn't think were possible when we first started with Assassin's Creed. You look at Altair, you look at the setting, you look at the gameplay mechanics, and you look how they evolved with Ezio in Assassin's Creed 2, and even in Assassin's Creed 3 with Connor, and there we saw the introduction of this new ship minigame that was in the homestead. And it was limited, but now they're taking that and they're breaking the idea wide open from just this prototype almost to an entire game built around it. And I'll admit, a little jaded by that at first. I'm like, you know what? I'm a big Assassin's Creed 3 lover. I think this game gets slandered. And now all of a sudden we love this idea of Black Flag because there's a whole game based around a mechanic that this very good game introduced. Ha! Yeah, catch you later. But wait, Ubisoft had other plans, and we'll talk about that. So ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into nostalgic or retrospective content, or even the occasional Assassin's Creed video, we actually have quite a few on the channel. My favorite retrospective we've done here next to the Spider-Man one is our Assassin's Creed retrospective. So please do check that out. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, Ubisoft had different plans. So I've been reviewing games for over a decade now, which is crazy. I started that all in my senior year of high school, and Ubisoft was actually the first company to reach out to me and connect and start bringing me to events and bringing me review codes. And I owe them pretty much everything because that was my first splash of industry experience. Little Matty lore, if you will, there. They reached out for a Far Cry 4 event. I flew to San Francisco. It was an experience unlike anything I had ever had before. I couldn't believe that this was my life, even if it was a one-time thing. Here I am, I love games, and this is a dream come true. From there, that was really my only connection. I'd review other games, but it would typically be when they launched, as we still do here, quite frankly. But really, Ubisoft was always hooking your boy up early. Now, with Assassin's Creed Black Flag, I was like, you know what? I'm good, man. I don't really need to be a part of that. Many of you dragged Assassin's Creed 3, and now suddenly the mechanics there are great. I'm okay. But then, what's different is that what we do nowadays with review copies is they'll email you a code pretty much. You go to the store, you redeem it, you download it, you play. Back then, I say this like, I've been doing this for decades, but a decade is something. They would actually mail you the game. So I remember getting home from college, because this was out during my first semester, and there was a package on the steps. I didn't order anything, so I crack it open, and it's a copy of Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag for PlayStation 3. So I'm like, okay, Ubisoft, you forced my hand. It's literally here on the doorstep. I got nothing to play. I'm a college student, not much money in my pocket. Okay, fine. I'll give it a shot. Let's see how this one goes, right? So I fire it up, and naturally, I really like it. I always talk about with Assassin's Creed that's the series that I think for many of us, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but I feel like many of us didn't know how great we truly had it during that stretch, right? Just getting all these new ideas injected into the franchise, fresh settings, and definitely when it comes to like the story, this is where it was really losing me. I was into what was happening with Ezio. There was continuity there. But here, when you look at what's going on with Abstergo, like you're doing memory research this time around, you felt like that was just a part of the game out of obligation. Like this has to be in the game. We have to have the out of the animus section, even though the game never pulls you out of it outside of, I think, that one time in the initial first couple of hours of the game. But otherwise, the story in AC Black Flag isn't bad, but just because they were more solid off individual stories from that point moving forward, I found myself more intrigued with Assassin's Creed as this historical action series that, where are you going to take me to next? What fun activities are you going to do to respect that period of time? And I feel like Black Flag did some really fun stuff that we're going to talk about today. So naturally, the whole game is built around ships. And I think that works when you're going from Assassin's Creed 3 in this little mini mode that you find in the homestead to Assassin's Creed 4, which is blowing up the whole idea. And then when you go from AC4 to Skull and Bones, it's like, okay, where's the evolution? Oh, I can't like really leave my ship or anything. Oh, okay. So it's really interesting to see the evolution, and then if it's even a word, de-evolution of the idea. But nonetheless, what happened with Assassin's Creed 4 that really made it stand out was how it utilized the ship. For each of the Assassin's Creed games, the most mobility we got was on horseback or free running, but now you get to sail a ship across the seas. And my big worry here going into it, I remember, was, all right, beyond, you know, me and my reservations because of my love for Assassin's Creed 3, I was a little bit concerned about how much free running was going to be in the game, because you were going to be going from ship to islands. And I think they did a good job striking the balance. So instead of having these massive, sprawling cityscapes, you get a lot of pocketed islands. Like one of the biggest ones to my memory was Havana, and even that wasn't super big. You weren't getting massive skyscrapers you were climbing often. There were a few hotspots that were bigger than others, but for the most part, you're going around a bunch of small pockets across this ocean, collecting animus fragments. You're finding viewpoints, you're hunting down creatures and crafting items with it like pistol holsters and health upgrades. You're going through all of this, just rinse and repeat per island. And this was one of those Ubisoft games that you can see the formula, like you can tell this is another completionist style Ubisoft game, but that point A to point B with the ship, I think is what made it so fun. Like riding the wave just right helped you pick up speed. Adjusting the sails to sometimes pick up more speed or slow down to make a sharper turn or to fit in a more narrow area. Of course, seeing other warships and schooners out on the ocean, seeing if they're worth taking out. You take out your spyglass and inspect them, and when you did so, it'd tell you what materials they had on them. So it's like, you know what, we should loot that place. You'd also be able to recruit your own pirate crew, which is really awesome. I love the kind of meta game within a game where you like send the pirates out to do something for you while you're doing all these other missions. That was something that was also, I think it was first introduced in Brotherhood, I want to say, but my memory may be escaping me here. But I remember it most with Assassin's Creed 3, where in Assassin's Creed 3, that was where like the homestead was having you send people up and down the East Coast, getting all sorts of materials. That kind of meta game from Assassin's Creed just always scratched a particular itch with me. I think it was the efficiency itch. Like, I feel like I'm doing so much at once right now. No time is being wasted. I still think anytime I fire up Black Flag, the biggest surprise to me is how good the ship sailing feels. Like, it doesn't feel necessarily realistic, right? It doesn't feel that way to me, but it's arcadey in a really good way. Like, you're able to tear down the sails and open them back up again and pick up and lose speed. Not necessarily as reactive as, say, a car where you hit the brakes and you're stopping pretty immediately, but there's quick enough reactivity where you feel you have control of the situation every step of the way. And when you combine that with like the chain shots and things like ramming your ship where you just gain a ton of speed and drill right into the side of an enemy ship and you see the chunk damage there, and then you just turn to the broadside cannons and unleash on them, and you hit like the sails, you do bonus damage. There was just so much reactivity in the ship combat and sailing that it felt really good. Again, my big worry going in when I played it for the first time was about that flow. It was about removing free running, and there is still free running. It works as you'd expect. It's definitely not a focal point here though, and I think that's what made Black Flag click with so many people. I do remember this was a game that was also releasing, or they had like a next-gen version for PS4 and Xbox One, and people were really excited because it was a world that you could spend a lot of time in on your PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. And when I think about that time, I just kind of get like warm and fuzzy on the inside. Like that transition to that generation was so special. There was a lot of, even though Xbox One was kind of stumbling in, they had really great exclusives. PlayStation had the vision for like maintaining ownership of your games, and then obviously the exclusives really came starting with Infamous Second Son and picked up from there. They had the Vita still going, so it was like a really exciting time for gaming. So yeah, there's like this weird nostalgia with the game, like the beginning of review copies, the beginning of a new generation, that kind of association with it. Just a lot of fun time spent with this game, and I think my favorite mechanic, or I should say objective to do on the map, was definitely the fortresses. So what happens is as you build up your ship, as you're ransacking all these ships and you're gathering parts, you're going to go into the menus and start upgrading your cannons, your ship hull, and so on and so forth. Basically, more health, more damage. You know how it goes, right? So you're going to spend all this time upgrading your crew and everything, and eventually there are going to be these pockets around the world where these massive fortresses lie, and they are big, and you're going to have to take them on, taking on a ton of ships, shooting down the defenses on the island. So it's like a little bit of a different challenge. And once those defenses are down, you're going to get off the ship and fight on foot. And yet, like, you've heard me complain about Assassin's Creed combat before, so like I'm not going to try to do it again, but all I'll say is, yeah, it's the counter combat, This one has more style because I remember in the trailer when we first saw Black Flag, the big ooh moment that was even crazier than what we saw in Assassin's Creed 3, where you were using like rifles and whatnot, was how you could pull out 2 pistols and shoot tons of enemies at once. So if you were to say ram into the side of an enemy ship and board them, and you had certain upgrades on your pistols, you could wipe out 3-4 enemies at once with a couple of presses of button. And that was really good because you were already getting the easy insta kills with counter killing in Assassin's Creed. So to have another option to do that, I actually thought was pretty good. It was nice to have and not just constantly be waiting, okay, attack me, counter stab, you're done, right? This gave us another option and made it a lot more enjoyable. But at this point, I was pretty disgruntled with Assassin's Creed's combat. It was starting to build up with me, and then when like Syndicate came around, which in hindsight, I really like Syndicate, but when that came around and the combat was still the same, I was very much done with the franchise. And it wasn't until I feel Odyssey really reinvented things with some of the systems brought in from Origins that I started to like Assassin's Creed combat once more. Still, those forts, like I wish there were more of them, but that was my favorite part because it was a good mixture of all of the ship combat and all of the on-ground stuff and the bonus objectives. Like, this was the one game where I wanted to do all the bonus objectives. Some of them really tough. Like, I remember there's one where you have to dive underwater and you have to avoid the sharks, but you want to find every chest underwater. And you're completely defenseless down there. Like, these sharks will chew you up for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It doesn't matter. The second you show up, they're going after you. And so, like, trying to get the bonus objectives in those, like, this game just had a lot of fun, unique challenges. And I think, to me, that's what's always defined Assassin's Creed. So when you get that right, you're winning, right? So when you are giving me unique objectives compared to so many other entries in the series, like, no other entries offer the ship combat in such an expansive way. No other entries offer, diving for treasure. No other entries offer those forts, right? They offer their own sets of things, but this felt like the most overhauled, evolved ideas put into one brand new Assassin's Creed game. And so, even though I had my gripes with, like, the Abstergo stuff, which, like, why is it even a part of the game? And I wasn't, like, the story isn't super memorable to me, although I know a lot of people really dig it, which is totally cool with me. Like, Black Flag is definitely one of the best Assassin's Creed games. Just, I go based on, like, memory, and there are Assassin's Creed stories that stick with me. Like, of course, we'll bring up 2. 4 isn't one that really sticks with me, but its connection between 3 and 4 is definitely one of those moments where you go, aha, very clever, I like that. It's really a game about efficiency, right? Like, you're just always building up towards something. You're building up loot towards your ship upgrades. You're building up parts, materials to get new upgrades on Edward. You're gathering new members for your crew. You're sending them out on missions while you're doing other missions. You're completing every sub-objective on an island. Like, this is one of those games where you're just checking every box. And I think sometimes games try to do that and it falls flat. But this is where I just say, like, Ubisoft-itis can really infect you, right? Like, because, like, sometimes a game has Ubisoft-itis in a negative way. Like, I talked about it with Far Cry 6. I feel like that was very unimaginative, just leaning back into the tropes of Far Cry 3 over and over. And that's like Ubisoft-itis when you're sick, right? And then there's Ubisoft-itis when you're pretty good, which is what you get here with Black Flag. Like, oh, the checklist is here, but there's a lot of cool, fun ideas that are new here, and I want to do them all, so I'm gonna knock these all out. So I don't have the platinum for Black Flag, but I remember I had like 80-something% of the trophies, which is a pretty good amount, pretty respectable amount. So yeah, I remember just spending a ton of time with this game. So yeah, I thought this would be a good time to talk about it. With Skull and Bones out, maybe we can just remember a time where Ubisoft was sailing the seas with a little bit more excitement, so to say, and not calling it a quadruple A game. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Do you like this game more than me? What do you like about it? What are some of your favorite memories with the game? Please do fire away. And with that, I will catch all of you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace